second. Good evening, everyone. For the record, it's July 21st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Thank you for being here with us. Council, when your name is called, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Stroop.
Here.
Councilmember Elizondo.
Here.
Councilmember Bliss is not present. Councilmember Kerner.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
And Councilmember Menchow.
Present.
With 6 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. And Councilmember Bliss, I talked to her just prior to the meeting, and she was really trying to find a way to be here. But she just came down with a cold today, and really my preference was not to have her here as part of the room. So, and she didn't sound very good at all. So, would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for everybody being here tonight. Just a reminder that we are live streaming tonight's meeting. If anybody is going to speak as part of the meeting tonight, we ask that you do speak at the microphone. Those that are watching online cannot hear if you do not speak into the microphone. And for those that do get the opportunity to come up and speak, I ask that you state your name first. If you're city staff, then state what department that you work from. And if you're a resident, please state if you're a Fair Oaks Ranch resident or not. We did have citizens to be heard is next what we'll move into. Excuse me. We had nobody signed up tonight for citizens to be heard. Is there anybody here as part of the meeting that did not get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? Okay. Then next we'll move on to presentations. And tonight, the first up, Joanna will talk about presentation to James S. Ford, Jimbo, in recognition of his retirement and outstanding service to the city of Fair Oaks Ranch.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor. So I'm Joanna Merrill, the Director of Human Resources and Communications here at the city. And tonight we are honoring Jimbo Ford. So Jimbo, if you would come up, I'll have you stand up here at the front with the mayor. We are recognizing Jimbo tonight and congratulating him on his retirement. He has been with the city of Fair Oaks Ranch for over 25 years. So I feel like it was just yesterday and we were giving him his 25-year service award. But now we're down the road. He is ready to hit that retirement life. But Jimbo has been with the city before the city of Fair Oaks Ranch even became the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. So he has so much institutional knowledge. We're really going to miss him and everything that he's done and accomplished throughout his time here. At least in the utility department, you know, I had some conversations with his team and they just let us know, there are just so many different projects that couldn't have been completed or worked on without his knowledge of where different things were located in the city, the history of how they came about. And so we really are losing a huge valuable asset to the city. But I will turn it over to the mayor to kind of take it away from here. But we also do have a signed picture frame. So everybody, all the employees kind of got together and signed it. So we will give that to you today.
I tell you what, let's move up here.
Let's go in the middle.
Since you deserve to be center of attention right now. You know, Joanna was talking about your time here in the city, and I spoke with you earlier about it, and I believe you said 1986. is really when he started working. Do you want to hold on to this, or we'll get it back to you?
It is kind of heavy, so.
I'm not going to take it from you, but I thought maybe it'd be easier if we put it down. 1986, and really started with Fairco. And Fairco was the utility company that put in the water distribution system that was ultimately transferred as part of our water utility, Fair Oaks Ranch. 1986, so a lot of years ago. No, it's not 20, it'd be 36 years ago, a long time ago. And I was put in a relation, I mean, where was I 36 years ago and what was I doing? And just to understand all that I've been through in 36 years, and during that entire time frame, you were working right here at Fair Oaks Ranch. And Joanna mentioned all the institutional knowledge that you have, and I've heard the stories that, you know, we're looking for a water line. You know, go ask Jimbo, he'll know where it's at. But the other thing that over 36 years, you've seen a lot of people come and go. Really, the one thing that stands out is the legacy that you leave behind. And do people tend to, or will they, continue to provide the quality services that have been provided to Fair Oaks Ranch for the last several years based on what you've instilled in those that have worked for you? And my belief, and just seeing those that were here tonight, and they were here earlier, that you've instilled that in them and built the work ethic and the knowledge to continue on and to provide that legacy of what you've provided them over time. Exactly. And Jim, all I can say is thank you very much for what all you've done for the city. And I believe Councilman Elizondo had something that he wanted to say as part of this.
Yeah, and I'll keep it brief, Jimbo, but, you know, so for those that probably have become aware, you know, I spent a lot of my career in the utility industry. And one of the first things I learned to appreciate there is how the folks out in the field are really the people that make it work for the citizens, for your customers. And I've heard all the stories, you know, through the years I've been on council about the great things you've done, the recognition you've got from the community. I think a lot of times as a community, we don't totally appreciate what y'all do, that you're there, you know, no matter what the weather is, no matter how difficult the situation is, to get the work done so that the safety and well-being of our community is taken care of. And I personally appreciate it a whole lot. I know the whole council appreciates it. I just hope that all the citizens recognize the value that you add as the Public Works Group, and you know, understand your contribution to, as the mayor indicated, to kind of setting the standard for that. And I'll also speak on behalf, I'm sure the staff also appreciates, because you make their job, you made their job much easier by the quality that you provided to your work. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Great to know you.
Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it.
I do have one other thing that I would like to present to you. As we went through this, and I talked to you earlier, I don't believe there's any other employee of Fair Oaks Ranch that can match the number of years of service that you provided to this city. And so as part of this, I'd like to provide you with a proclamation from the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. And this reads, whereas Jimbo Ford has faithfully served the residents of the city of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, for 39 years, beginning his employment with Fairco in 1983. And whereas Jimbo was brought on as a city employee after the city purchased the water utility company in 2001. And whereas the city of Fair Oaks Ranch recognizes the valuable contributions from Jimbo during his more than 25-year tenure with the city, having served in various positions, and completes his career as a senior level water wastewater operator. And whereas he has earned the respect and admiration from citizens and city staff during his employment. And whereas he has witnessed the growth of Fair Oaks Ranch into a municipality where he has been an integral part of the progress and strides made to make Fair Oaks Ranch the ideal and desirable community it is today. And whereas the City of Fair Oaks Ranch wants to formally recognize Jimbo Ford for his service to this community and wish him health, happiness, and well-being after he retires from the City of Fair Oaks Ranch on July 22nd, 2022. Now and therefore, by the power vested in me as the mayor of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, I hereby proclaim our sincere thanks to Jimbo for his dedication and his work to make our community the special place that it is. And furthermore, we will fully recognize the overall commitment and the tremendous contribution in his distinguished service to our city. Signed today. Thank you very much, sir. Can we get a picture? Here, hold on.
So I understand he's still on the clock till tomorrow, right? Thank you, Jimbo.
Best of luck to you.
Enjoy.
I did ask Jimbo what his future plans were, and he told me he has no plans. The next presentation item that we'll move into for tonight is the roadway safety improvement presentation, and I'll turn this over first to Grant. Get us started.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, ladies and gentlemen in attendance. Assisting me tonight with this presentation is Julio Colunga, my Assistant Public Works Director, and also Mike Garza, our General Engineer and Consultant. So the purpose of this presentation is threefold. The first is just to provide an update on some of the ongoing safety traffic improvement projects going on across the city. The second is to get some guidance on what stop signs or speed limit changes we might want to include in a future ordinance. And the third is just to hear what other transportation safety concerns are out there. If there's any, we're starting to plan our next year's annual Safe Street Maintenance Plan, and we'd like to include it in there. So if there's anything that comes up, please let me know. There are a few locations that are kind of highlighted in this presentation, and we'll talk through those. But if there's others, please let me know. Here's tonight's agenda. In a minute, I'll ask Julio to come up and give us an update on the Chart Rail Realignment project and also the annual street maintenance plan that's already started and ongoing. I'll follow that with some discussion on some stop sign and speed limit changes and then some other areas of concern. And then lastly, I'll ask Mike Garza to come up to give a short update on the HSIP project and the schedule for that. Julio, do you want to take this over?
Okay, evening council. Okay, so Chartwell realignment, as you can tell, there's a lot of progress going on out there. Plan is to go ahead and have it open and running for school. So I've been working with the school district a lot and with our contractor to make sure that it is up and running. Originally we thought we were going to be behind schedule because of the utilities. As you drive out there, you'll see there's a box in the way. AT&T has yet to move it. They're working on it, but we're not letting that stop us from continuing on the project. So phase one traffic plan was actually set up in place up until yesterday when they went in and started doing the paving. We've actually, to speed the process along, we actually skipped 1A and phase two and went straight to 3 after meeting with the school district and everybody and decided instead of shifting traffic back and forth, just, you know what, go from one setup, which was the previous setup, the original Chartwell lane, to paving this road and then transferring traffic. So traffic is already on that road out there. It isn't the final surface that's laid out. That surface out there is basically the base material. Once everything's all said and done and everything's moved out the way, we'll put that final surface in. It's just hard to tell with AT&T schedule. I mean, when I talked to them last, they're like, oh, it could be, you know, a couple weeks, could be a couple months. So pushing for sooner. So, but we want to be sure it's up and running for the school. Traffic will be well aware of what's going on. I'll be meeting with the school district next week, and we'll be pushing this out to the residents as well as all the parents whose kids attend that school, so they're aware of the traffic. Let me go ahead and jump on over. I don't know if you have any questions on the Chartwell realignment project. Yes, sir.
What kind of escalations have we tried on AT&T to try to get response?
We have tried a lot to the point where they got mad because they thought we were going to hit their stuff by accident. But we have reached out to them. They have us pretty much escalating. I mean, we're one of the top projects right now for them to go ahead and get. The issue they're having is getting material. It is a short run, so they're hoping that they can get that in pretty quick. We actually have a couple different options. I'm working on trying to get a hold of them because we're going to see if maybe we can even try lowering that box or just come up with different plans so that hopefully that box isn't left there in the center of the road. If it is to remain until they can go ahead and remove it, we do have plans to put some barricades around it and more than likely open the street with temporary tabs to direct traffic, and it'll look just like the road's going to look when it's said and done, except it'll just have that box in the middle for the meantime. It'll look kind of funny, but you know, we're pushing, and the biggest thing is to have it open, have the crosswalks open for the kids, have the sidewalks open. So as of right now, we're on schedule to have that done. Included a schedule. Like I said, we're pushing along. We're actually further longer than what we actually sped up the process with us going ahead and skipping those 1A and 2 phases. So we'll start working on the concrete next week. Go ahead and jump on over to annual street maintenance. Well, actually, you know what? I think the annual street maintenance is just a quick update, but just to go ahead and bring you all up to speed on the annual street maintenance. Contractors were able to get out here a lot sooner than we expected. They'll be out here next week. Some of them are already out here this week working on cul-de-sacs or the fog seal roads on the south side of the city. They've gone ahead and fog sealed the cul-de-sacs. They came out really well. Next week they'll be out working on the south side again. They're going to be doing the fog seal roads. Basically Monday and Tuesday they'll be doing the north and south side roads. They'll be treating the east side of the road. The roads running east and west, they'll be treating the south side of the road. Thursday, they're going to go ahead and flip that around. They are going to have traffic set up one way, so we'll be pushing that out to the residents tomorrow to go ahead and get that out there and just give them notice that, you know, roads will be set up one way to just make it safer for residents to travel back and forth. It is drying a lot faster than we expected because of the heat, of course. So hopefully roads will be open up sooner than expected, but the process is going really well on the fog seal side. They're going to be working out on the south side basically Monday to Friday, possibly. Friday will be the touch-up day. Once they're done there, the fog seal will be done. All that'll be left is striping on that side. At the same time, though, we're going to be starting the process on the middle section of the city, which is going to be the micro seal, which is the similar setup that we did to micro for the Deer Meadows estates. So they'll be touching those roads up, and those roads again will be shut down, half a road. The material you can drive over, it is self-healing, so shouldn't have a whole lot of issues. We'll have code reds going out, but those roads are going to be getting worked on next week, and then they're going to have about a gap in between. Their staff needs to go home for about a week, take some rest, and they'll be back out 2 weeks later to go ahead and finish up the rest of the roads. The Parkway will be the last road. But aside from that, I mean, there is a whole lot of work that's going to be going on over the next couple weeks. We're doing everything we can to get communications out to residents, issuing code reds, putting it on social media, have our electrical signs out. But, you know, we're getting dirt moving and getting projects completed. So, yes, ma'am.
Hey, Herb. Okay.
Is the fog seal contractor a new contractor, or is one we've used in the past?
It is a new contractor.
I've heard great feedback on how well they've been interacting with the residents, so just wanted to let you know that.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad to know that.
Okay.
Yes, okay. I'll make sure to pass it along to their staff. But aside from that, you know, we'll have that all taken care of hopefully the next couple weeks, and then we'll come back in, we'll do the striping and everything. So the goal was to get along as far as we could with school starting, wanted to be sure we had traffic taken care of, and this wouldn't be such a big issue. So, but I don't know if you have any other questions. If not, hopefully the next couple weeks you'll see everything taken care of, and then we'll start moving on to the next plan. So.
All right, thank you very much, Julio. One thing he's really skimmed over is as part of the Chartwell Realignment project, we are installing 2 new stop signs. We're in the process of saw cutting the road to put the 88 concrete ramps and putting a new sidewalk to that intersection. But as part of that improvement, we are also putting 2 new stop signs to create a 4-way stop. And the intent here is to include those 2 new stop signs as part of a future ordinance so that we can enforce those traffic laws.
Graham, is that something we could talk about real quick?
Yes, sir.
Not that I'm totally against it, but as I look at this and I drive Dietz Elkhorn, it's probably 95% of the time there's no one crossing the road there. And so just questioning the requirement or need for a 4-way stop there. Now, I fully understand that during school times we have a lot of kids crossing there, but are there alternatives that we could look at that could be utilized for protecting individuals while crossing the road? And I make that statement based on the reason I believe we're putting a 4-way stop there is protection of individuals as they cross in the crosswalks. Is that accurate, or?
That is accurate.
So if it's a small percentage of time that people are utilizing that, and another assumption on my part, so is there activated crosswalks or something else that we could utilize that would provide the protection needed for people crossing the road, but maybe not require a 4-way stop for 100% of the time?
So there are alternatives that we looked at, including pedestrian-activated crosswalks. They're a little bit more expensive to put in and maintain. And I don't know if they provide that degree of safety for the pedestrians that do use that area. Mike, you want to address or add any comments on that one? Sure.
Mayor, yeah, and I know we've discussed this in the past. Our recommendation as a GEC from a safety standpoint is to implement the 4-way stop. I understand, just like any other intersection, we kind of want that free flow movement, but when we conducted the safety corridor analysis safety study for all of Dietz Elkhorn from Ralph Fair Road all the way over to Old Fred Road, which is kind of like the limits within our city for the most part, we focused specifically on trying to ensure that our community had a safe way to travel our roadway, and this particular location stood out as our #1 goal, and that's why we realigned the road. So I'd be personally, I have a lot invested as well. My children attend the school here. From our standpoint, convenience and safety are 2 totally different things, and we'll have that conversation here today. But as a GEC, we're recommending the 4-way stop here. There were more instances than just seeing children crossing during the peak periods of pickup and drop off. There were plenty of times that we saw people crossing just to go walk the park or walk through the access point or walk through that area through the neighborhood. So it wasn't only during school days that we saw pedestrians crossing through there. Without that, I know Grant mentioned hybrid actuated, I think we usually call them either hawks or roadside rapid flashing beacons. Those typically you see at a mid-block crossing because it gets really confusing to vehicles when you have it at an actual intersection, because when they press that button, cars don't know if they should stop or not. There's a whole another legal discussion on whether or not it's a yellow flasher or a red flasher, because red means stop, yellow means warning. It gets very complicated to mix the 2. So from our standpoint, based on our analysis, we're recommending a 4-way stop.
Mayor, I brought this up last time we had this discussion, so I guess y'all just decided that we're going to have 4-way stops. I absolutely disagree that we don't need I don't think we need a 4-way stop there. I agree with the mayor. I think that there's got to be a better way to stop traffic, however we do it during high peak times at the school. I can absolutely understand that we spent the money to study it. I just think that having a 4-way stop at 2 o'clock in the morning or pick the time of day when there's nobody there to go ahead and have a stop impedes the flow of traffic unnecessarily.
And if I may add on to that, part of what y'all asked us to do in our corridor study was try to find a way to ensure that detail coordinate is in a highway that allows people to cut through our community from I-10 to Ralph Fair Road, which is happening. And with Lemon Creek, that y'all asked us to look into as well, we're seeing an increase in truck traffic. We're seeing higher speeds. We're seeing an unsafe condition on our major arterial, our only arterial. So the same way we've asked TxDOT on behalf of you as council to slow down a little bit with building a highway through our town, a stop sign is kind of along those lines, right? We're not trying to build a high-speed facility through town. So yes, I agree with you, convenience is a factor at 2 in the morning, but the safety of a child crossing to go to school, to me, is more important, at least my personal opinion. So
I get
that's why
it,
I'll
and we
stand
have
by it.
police cars there during those times when the school gets out and everything else. I'm not convinced that this is the way to go before we start putting those out there. I don't know if that's locked in stone at this point, but I think we need to reconsider that.
Leslie?
I've had an issue with this since the start as well, and I also agree that we should come up with some other way, whether, again, it's a stop, a four-way, I don't know what the name of it is, a four-way stop, they hit the button, and then it allows the access and the travel across, similar to what they have up in Bernie in different areas. I think it should be studied. So I agree with those two. And the other consideration I would kind of wanted to throw out there is that this, at least from what I understand, this street is one of the ones that we are directing traffic to cross through the city, if that makes sense. So I think Ammon Road, you called them a collector street, but I don't think like completely stopping traffic right in front of the traffic light there is, the best use of it. I mean, I get constant complaints already from people with the traffic backup that happens during the school on the weekends when they use that for sports events, the little kids. So I think that we truly need to consider doing something different versus putting a four-way stop there.
So my question is, I think the decision to put a four-way stop is based less on historical use of that intersection, because that intersection doesn't exist in the design that it's going to be in. I mean, it's kind of anticipated use of how it's going to look based off of previous configuration. How risky is it if we keep the stop signs the way they are, the 2 stop signs, evaluate the intersection and the new design for a period of time, and then come back with actual data of the streets and the configuration we're putting it in, and then propose that? I think I would like to see that more, because we're making a decision based off assumptions of how traffic's going to be in the new pattern rather than actual data. I mean, we have data from the old configuration, right? And so is that a possible option?
So I don't think the traffic pattern's changing drastically between the old
The
configuration
whole
and the new
I mean, we're
configuration.
literally just dug up all this stuff to make an intersection that didn't exist before.
My only suggestion would be, so from anytime a product is under construction, when it comes to what we call a traffic control plan or a TCP, there are means that are allowed as an engineer. I have the license as an engineer. I can implement a four-way stop during the traffic control plan. It's not enforceable via code, right?
Got
Any
it.
project. And that's essentially what is going to happen here from a safety standpoint under construction. I mean, to me, that's, from a safety standpoint, that's part of the plans we developed. You guys ultimately have to make a decision on whether or not to enforce the code and vote on that. So
Got it.
I guess what I'm saying out loud, I'm thinking out loud with you here, is that essentially could happen, right? We're planning to implement it as part of the traffic control plan. It's not something that you voted on. It's not something that's enforceable. If we took it out, the only thing that I would worry about is driver expectation, because people get used to that. But ultimately, it'd be Grant's decision to make.
So I appreciate your engineering expertise put into this. As a PE, would you not sign off on it if it didn't have a four-way stop?
I've
Okay,
already-
sorry, let me put it positively. Would you only sign off on it if it had a four-way stop?
I cannot sign off on the ordinance, obviously. I'm signing off on just
I'm
the
signing
engineering
off on the
document.
design of the intersection. Is,
Knowing the risks and that I've already conducted the study, yes, I would say I highly recommend it. I would not, personally, I would not sign off on anything without a four-way stop. That'd have
thank
to
you,
be the
okay.
city. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
I guess I differ from everybody else, but I would defer to the experts here. I have a kid and we'll have 2 children next year that go to that school. We use the field on the weekends for sporting events. I see how busy it is. I run around the city and I run down Dietz in this area a lot. And there is a lot of foot traffic even when it's not a school time. And I think I agree with Mike that safety should be the #1 priority over convenience. Also, we have talked many times, just like Mike was saying, about the through traffic and how do we kind of help deter people from using this as a cut through. And I just don't think that there's going to be this massive traffic backup that people are talking about, that they're concerned that there's just going to be this massive traffic backup. I just don't see that as becoming a huge problem, and I definitely don't think that that trumps the safety of my children. So I would, if the experts say that this is the way to go, then that's what I would be in favor of.
Roy.
Yeah, my viewpoint is that staff is responsible for making recommendations based on their, professional expertise and accountabilities there. The accountability for making the policy is ours. And I personally would not want to be in a position of having a recommendation that says for the safety of people traveling through there that it's a four-way stop, and to make some other decision. I wouldn't want to take that call when something happens at that intersection. So I guess, like Councilwoman Stroop, in favor of following the recommendations from our professional engineering staff.
Just to address some of the issues, Council, and I know some of the questions y'all have. If y'all recall, Van Rob, we issued a four-way stop there. Concerns were traffic backing up, all sorts of issues. That has seemed to have worked out perfectly fine. There's been no issues that actually help improve traffic. It's going to function similar to what Dietz and the Parkway do. And like Mike mentioned, I know when this first got brought up, and I've been here plenty of years to know that previous councils, even now, the whole goal was we don't want this to be a main thoroughfare. We don't want people traveling through here. We want to deter it. Well, we're putting these tools in place, the stop sign, the radar signs, the stop sign, the radar sign, the stop sign. We're trying to put that stuff in place. So this is one of the things that, I know it's an inconvenience. I know it's a pain. We had to deal with the Van Rob one when we put that out there, but it has helped a whole lot. Mike was a part of that when we put it out there. And this is one of the things that I would, highly encourage. That I understand it's an inconvenience, but it is something that when you weigh the options of having an accident, which, we don't want there to ever be one, if we go ahead and go with yellow flashers, well, it doesn't mean they're going to stop. You're going to hope they stop, but that 1% that doesn't could be the big difference of whether we said, yeah, put stop signs or don't.
So, hey, Councilman.
I absolutely understand, and I understand the traffic study and everything else. But for us to actually believe that the 2 stop signs are going to keep Dietz from being a throughway from Lemon Creek is, I think, a little bit of a reach, frankly. I think Dietz. We're gonna be back with another pattern study here not too long once that project is completed, because Dietz is going to turn into a turnpike. That's the way I think it's going to happen. And I don't think the stop signs are either which way. I understand the safety aspect, and whatever we decide to do, I think all of us here are concerned about safety. And we were I guess I'm really asking to see if there were some other options that we could make it a part-time for during high peak for kids or something to that effect.
I have more of a point of order question. This is presented as a presentation. I don't think we can actually make any decisions or guidance during this agenda item. So I think maybe we could send our comments to Tobin afterwards if we want, right?
Thank you. That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Is the good thing tonight is you don't have to make a decision.
We can't make any decisions.
If it's okay with y'all, if you allow us an opportunity to sit down and develop some other options, because I think it can be studied both ways, whether you start with a two-way or another device or a four-way, and we collect the data after the functionality of this intersection, proves one way or the other. You can always remove stop signs, or you can always add them or other devices. So let me encourage my team to come back with some other options when the ordinance comes back to you and we finalize that project. Recommendation may stay the same. It may not, but be happy to explore that.
And as part of this, I mean, can we look at other options?
Yes, sir.
For traffic control measures there other than stop signs?
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay. If you remember back in March of 2022, the city signed a law enforcement agreement with both the Elkhorn Ridge HOA and the Front Gate HOA. And in accordance with those law enforcement agreements, an ordinance is required to be able to enforce the traffic rules and laws within those gated communities. Our intent is to include all of those that are within Elkhorn Ridge and all of those that haven't yet been adopted per ordinance in Front Gate as part of that future ordinance. Yes, sir.
So, and we've been through this before, so I apologize for not remembering when we've done this for other areas. But when we do that ordinance, are those subdivisions required to bring their signage under like the standards that we use for the city when they switch from, I guess, private enforcement to public enforcement? In other words, the standards for how and when the signs are placed and those kinds of things?
I believe I believe they already meet the standards.
Okay.
We'd have to take a look, but some of those standards are outlined in those law enforcement agreements. Okay. All right, the next few slides cover a few proposed changes and some other areas that we might want to consider in the future. This first here is the intersection of Royal Ascot and Pintado Lane. This is right adjacent to water plant number 2. And we've studied this intersection. The recommendation here is to replace the yield sign with a stop. If you can imagine yourself, I guess, driving on Pintado Lane toward the intersection, you don't have a lot of sight distance either left or right. You can't see cars approaching from the right until you pass that house on the right-hand side, and you can't really see vehicles approaching from the left until you get past the fence for the water plant. And by the time you see a vehicle, it may be too late. You don't really have that stopping distance. So that's the reason for the recommendation. Some of the calculations done here were done by our GEC, and it's supported by our GEC as well. Yes, ma'am.
From what I understand, the visibility got less at that intersection when we built a fence closer to the intersection. Is there a reason why we did that? If we moved it back or moved it out some, would it alleviate the safety concern?
Well, first of all, the reason we had to enlarge the footprint of our water plant was to accommodate the larger hydro tank, as well as to provide enough room for staff to maneuver equipment when doing maintenance back there. Yes, sir.
In more ways than one. Trying to understand this diagram, but it almost, am I wrong in seeing from this that the sight lines were deficient even before we moved the fence?
That's
That there was
correct.
already an issue?
That's correct. We didn't meet the yield stop sight distance before the fence was expanded, so now the situation's even a little bit worse.
Thank you.
Hey, Grant, quick question. In presenting this tonight, you said that done the study and we've recognized these, but these are something that I believe you're wording that we should look at over time and maybe for a future consideration item of changing this from a yield sign to a stop sign.
Yeah, and that's the guidance I'm trying to get tonight.
Okay.
Do we want to move forward with considering this change, or is this something we just want to live with? Yes.
Grant, is there room to do more of a corner clip with the fence, 25, 50 feet back, and still have enough room behind the fence to do appropriate maintenance work and equipment move? Do we know, or is that something we can look at?
It's something we can look
On
at.
the left side, like we can't do anything about the right side.
But again, I want to understand, because what I just heard the answer was is that even before the fence was changed, this intersection warranted having a stop sign versus a yield sign. So I don't think the fence is the big driver here.
I agree, but what I'm asking is, can we look at a new configuration for the fence, whether it's the old location or new? Maybe there's a third new location and that can come into compliance. Don't know.
But the issue even goes to the other side, and I guess if this is all trued up, you know, going east, if this is a north-south, but away from the water plant, the sight line is deficient. Do I understand the diagram
That's correct.
correctly? So whatever we do with the water plant is not going to resolve the issue. It doesn't look like.
I'm just going to say that I had drove up there today to look at this, and even with my high Jeep, trying to see around the fence where it is now I had to pull out really far to get any kind of line of sight there. So I think we should, as Tobin said, reconsider the location if we can, if it's possible for y'all's moving around and the stuff you need to do, because even if you put a stop sign there, it was almost impossible to see around the fence anyways. So drive it and take a look at it.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree, Chesley, thank you. I do think also when I go to make decisions like this, I'd like to understand if there have been any complaints from residents or concerns. I know engineering-wise, you know, you're looking at a potential problem. I'd like to also see if there has been any actual problems or any actual complaints by residents. But regardless, it does seem like the fence is making the problem worse. So maybe we can adjust that first and then decide if we need to make any other. I mean, there is already a yield sign, so there is some attention to the residents to say, okay, you need to really pay attention to this intersection. But I think just for my determination, that additional information would always be helpful for me. And besides just the engineering analysis, bringing in any other feedback as far as has there been accidents, has there been issues here, and has there been any citizen comments to the city. That would just be additional information that would help me in a decision like this.
I think to build on, if that's okay, to build on what Laura's saying.
I yield my time.
What was it that made us, I guess my question is, what was it that made us look at all of these in the first place?
Over the past 2 years, there's been a general focus on traffic and roadway safety. We've been providing numerous updates on various projects and locations to the city. And as we've been doing that, we thought, hey, we noticed there might be an issue at this location, and we noticed there might be an issue at other locations. So we're just bringing it to your attention. If there's a desire to look into these further, we can. If there is not a desire, then we don't.
I appreciate you bringing the attention to this intersection, mainly because I was not aware that a fence that we put up caused a bigger problem than that. I would rather address that first than the yield or stop sign situation.
Okay.
They
Well,
give
thank
you what you're looking for?
Yeah, I got the guidance I needed on this location. Thank you. Now, knowing that, we do have a lot of other yield signs throughout our city, many, many more. We haven't done the necessary studies or evaluations for any of these other locations, but the general sense I get is, well, maybe we don't want to change them until we actually have actual hard data to look at before to make that decision.
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. So just to keep it on the radar, we may look at some of those in the future.
Hey, Grant, just a quick question related to that. So I drove around and looked at some of these stop and yield signs on the south side of our city yesterday. And any idea, or do we have any historical documents that provide, you know, what the determinations were at the time of why on one street we put stop signs, and then a quarter mile down the road it looks very similar, but we put a yield sign?
Yeah.
Do we have any background or anything that relates to
don't think
the
we do.
decision process?
I know, I just really quick, when I first came on board as your GEC, I think Ron Emmons was the city engineer at the time, and we took a drive around every roadway we have, all 60 miles worth. And one of the things he had asked us to look at way back then was there wasn't very much consistency. It was all over the place. So I think maybe that's part of our conversation when you asked us to look at everything across the board from a safety standpoint. The general discussion is that something you want us to analyze? Is it worth it? Are there any concerns that you're hearing from citizens, or do we just table it? And it sounds like that's kind of what we're hearing. So just additional input.
Yes, sir.
I walk all the way over there to say no.
Define issues, sir. Define issues. Mhm. Officer Gonzalez is currently working on the monthly statistics for June right now, but I can tell you that we already have an increase in accidents across the city. We do have an increase in traffic enforcement violations. On some of the side streets that we're talking about, especially this area here, other than the visibility, speed issues, and traffic volume issues, we have had a few minor accidents, nothing too bad. Probably more so involving golf carts going a little too fast down the hill, not using the stop sign. But I haven't reviewed statistics for those particular ones where the yield signs are. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I believe we need to change, but I haven't, like I said, I haven't dove into those numbers, but I would defer to the expert there.
I'm just going to chime in because there's a picture here of the intersection of my street at Pimlico. And just from personal experience, it's going to be hard to say that there's hard data about all the near misses that happen. And so my observation in the 18 years we've been here is that the traffic volumes are increasing, the speeds are increasing as people's lives get busier or whatever the driver behind that is. And where, you know, yes, I'm in the habit, I get to the end of my thing and I take a quick glance back and forth and kind of have it calibrated. Can I go or not go, or do I stop? But it's getting more and more iffy as time goes by. And I think we need to, back to Ms. Stroop's comment, you know, I would tend to err on the side of safety. If in order to make sure that I don't end up getting T-boned, leaving my cul-de-sac, you know, I can go ahead and stop. It's not a big deal to me. So I'm just, that's my input on if you're looking for feedback on what to continue looking at on these things. Grant.
Laura.
I think we have enough known safety issues that we need to deal with first before going out and looking at maybe it might happen one day, a safety issue. I think we need to address those first. If you're saying that we have no projects to work in the safety area next year, that's a different conversation. But I think we have quite a few we still have to address before we start driving around looking for options, potential problems.
Yes, ma'am, that's not what I'm saying. We have huge projects coming
Right,
up in the
exactly.
near future.
I know,
Right.
that's what I'm saying. is
But there's
I
some quick things that could be changed if we're going to replace some signs anyway, if we want to replace it with a stop sign or keep it as a yield sign. Those are the kind of things that we want to include as our annual plan. That's
Okay.
all.
No, I appreciate that. No, and I thank you for coming and bringing this up. I'm just saying is, I think I'd rather focus on the ones we know now and make those done well and.
Okay. I know this one, next one has come up in the past, and I just wanted to bring it up again in case council wanted us to look into it a little bit further. This was the intersection of High Echelon, Battle Intense, and Hansel. Some of the special considerations at this location, we have some, and again, a non-aligned street, some sight distance issues. It's a three-way stop when the driver expectation might be for a four-way stop. There are pedestrians that use this location, and we also have a grade of approach with some of the hills coming down of Hansel as well. That kind of make this a concern. I believe the data we had was about 2 years ago when we took these traffic counts. It didn't warrant an all-stop intersection just based on the volume and the number of accidents we had. But again, there's been a lot of development in the area, like River Valley, and there's a lot of cut-through traffic. So there might be a need to reevaluate this in the future. Yes, ma'am.
I think the only thing that I remember hearing when this was presented that was something that was an active complaint by residents was, if you go back the picture one, if you don't mind, was right there at this intersection is a bus stop. And there's really no safe place for those kids to stand other than literally in the dirt right there next to that sign. And I think of the complaints that I hear is the safety of the kids at that bus stop while they're waiting out there, because it's dark sometimes when they're out there. Like, I see them, they have like lights on just so they could stand there safely. Is there an option, kind of like what we're doing with bus stop areas in Keeneland and stuff, to do bus stop signing? Because I think that would bring a much more quick and effective response to the bus stop situation. I hear more about that than anything else regarding this intersection, but I haven't seen any proposed solutions for the bus stop situation.
Okay. No, that's definitely something we
Okay.
can include next year. I know on Keeneland, we're replacing a lot of those dark orange signs with bright yellow-green signs, and that's some improvement that we can do here as well.
Yeah, because I know they have like a parent patrol where they each are out there to make sure that the kids are safe during that time, and they rotate through the parents, and it shouldn't have to be that way.
Okay. You may have seen this in the past. This was an alternate to stop signs, and in fact, it would get rid of some of the stop signs in the area and just make it a pass-through. This is just something to consider as we look toward the future. All right. This next location is the intersection of Keeneland and Battle Intense and Venturer. This is one location where I do get hear a lot of stories about near misses, either by vehicles speeding on Keeneland or for vehicles not stopping on Venturer or Battle Intense. There's some. This may be a location where we want to investigate further for possible traffic control measures. Maybe it's a left turn lane. Maybe it is a new stop sign, although that we know that might not be the preferred solution. But this is a location that's growing in interest, and we may have to look in the future.
I think it's an area that's worth keeping an eye on.
Correct.
As you said, I think we see a lot more traffic driving on it. And speed control on Keeneland could be an issue. I don't know for sure, but and what would traffic control measures at that location do to preempt some of the other safety measures that we're seeing along the road. That makes sense? If we do have speeding and people running a stop sign, does putting a four-way stop there reduce the safety impact of others' violations?
Right.
So my recommendation would be that, as we go forward, it's probably an area that we continue to collect information on and look at this in the future.
Agree. Yes, sir.
I don't know if...
Yes, ma'am.
Remind me, this is one of the areas we're already planning to do bus stop signs on, right?
Yes, in fact, that's
Okay.
coming up on the next slide, I believe. Right here.
This is funded and this will be happening?
This is part of this current year's annual maintenance plan.
Perfect,
Yes.
that's what I thought.
I don't think we've bought the signs yet. We still have to order those, but we should be able to get them done this year. Again, the plan here is for the two existing bus stop locations is to replace all of those signs with bright neon green signs so they're much more visible and motorists do know when they're approaching a bus stop location. The other part of this was to reduce the speed limit through this area. Right now it changes from 20 miles per hour to 30 to 20 to 30, and just to make it consistent so everybody knows what the speed limit through this area is, our plan was to change it to 20 miles per hour. And you can see that on this next slide here, that section.
The reduction to 20, full agreement with the
Signage.
school bus unloading signs that we're putting in, and fully believe that they're needed within the area. Are we doing some analysis? Do we want to reduce this to 20, or are we making a recommendation now that just to lower this to 20?
So primarily to be consistent, so motorists know as they're driving through this area that it's 20 once you get onto Battle Intense and reach. It's all the way up to Kingman.
Good.
So Mayor, so the proposal is on Battle Intense between Fairway Valley and Keeneland. That's the section of road where you're recommending reduction to 20. Is that correct, Grant?
It's currently 20 on the right-hand side in the light blue.
Yep.
Yep. The portion in dark blue changes from 30 to 20 to 30, all the way up to Keeneland.
Okay. And so you're recommending that just be 20 all the way through?
Correct.
I mean, I know there's a lot of blind turn areas in that area. Is that based off of traffic analysis or is it based off of those actual blind turn areas?
And I believe some of the signs do say 20 miles per hour because you have a sharp turn coming around the bend. Yes, that's part of it as well.
So if we do in fact do that, can then we make an agreement to remove the raised crosswalk? Because that would be wonderful if we remove that raised crosswalk and just then in lieu of the 20 mile per hour. Because the purpose of that raised crosswalk is to slow people down. We're reducing the speed limit, so do we need that raised crosswalk anymore?
That's exactly what I was going to bring up.
I'd be more amenable to 20 miles per hour if I saw that removed. I'm just saying.
I don't have the history on the raised crosswalk.
Oh,
Would have to look into
we'll be
that.
glad to
I
share
don't
that
think
with
you
you.
really want to know.
Yeah, for the record, it's a speed table, not a crosswalk. But
Oh,
let,
I've
us,
heard-
let us take a look at it.
Why I was asking were you done?
I'm
Sorry.
done.
I just had a question on if we're still studying it, is this something we're looking at? Is the recommendation that we want to go to 20 because 30 miles an hour is too fast? Or is it that we're looking at it and people are speeding in this area and we want to lower it to a 20 so that we get people at a safer speed that would be somewhere 25, 30 miles an hour?
Yeah, we feel 20 is a safer speed, especially because of some of those turns and some of those bus stops that are located along this stretch of road.
And there's a lot of golf
Right.
cart traffic there.
Okay.
Is that what you need?
I think so.
Clear as mud.
All right. Last topic here is an update on the Hsip project. Mike, you want to take this one? Thank you.
Thank you, Council. So we got great news from FHWA. They went ahead and approved our project. So last time I presented to y'all, we discussed priorities, the prioritization, if you will, of multiple projects. We selected the Post Oak Trail project, and it did get approved. So we actually got approved at the full amount that was available, the $2.6 million. The TxDOT did actually send the draft advanced funding agreement over to us today. I saw it in my inbox today. It was too late to incorporate into the agenda, but we're excited about the opportunity to move forward here. As we discussed last time, the next steps are to get City Council approval through that resolution. That is what TxDOT will need in order to execute the AFA. And then, don't quote me on this, but when we met with TxDOT, we explained to them that due to the timing of everything, this was something we were planning for upcoming fiscal year budgets, not necessarily right now today. So I believe they're going to work with us a little bit, and there may be a way for us to have a smaller upfront payment. Right now, I'm showing kind of a worst case scenario here with a $275,000 upfront with a $275,000 on the back end. That would be our full amount. There's a chance that upfront number will be much less, which will be more amenable to our budget for this fiscal year coming up. So I'll have a lot more details to present at the next meeting, and hopefully you'll have a chance to vote on it officially at that point in time. But this is a high-level schedule showing next steps as a city, what we need to move forward with. I know Grant is reaching out to a consultant to start scoping out that project, and we're just very excited to have been approved and ready to move forward. So it's great news.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mike. And I believe that's our last slide. If there's any other questions or discussion items, we'd be glad to address them.
Grant, did you get everything as part of the presentation that you were looking for?
It was a lot. I may have to watch the recording, but I think I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
That completes the presentations that we had tonight. We'll now move on to consent agenda. We do have 2 items on the consent agenda tonight. First is the approval of the July 7th, 2022 regular City Council meeting minutes. And the second item is the approval of the July 13th, 2022 special City Council meeting minutes. Is there any council member that would like to pull an item from consent for consideration and discussion? And then with that, then could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second? And with that, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Next, we'll move on to reports from staff. We have 2 for tonight. First is the status update on the boards and commission applications. And I believe our City Secretary, Christina, is going to go through this.
Good evening, Council. I wanted to discuss the where we stand right now regarding our boards and commissions. We submitted letters to all of our board and commission members whose term would be up this year. And if you can look at the display on the screen, we had, of the 4 Building Codes Board of Appeals, there were 3, oh my goodness, I don't have my glasses on. There are 2 positions that are open. One was a person who was already there, and we also had an open position. Of those positions, the person who had a position would like to stay in it. So we only have 1 position, which would be the alternate that we would need to fill. We have the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee, of which we have 9 members total, 3 open positions, and all 3 of the incumbents have requested to stay on. We have the Municipal District Development Board. There are 7 total members, 4 open positions, and all 4 of those incumbents are willing to continue to serve. Lastly, we have the Zoning Board of Adjustment. There are 7 members, 4 open positions, 3 incumbents have decided they would like to stay. Right now, one of those positions that is open was from Shane Stolarczyk. We do have 2 people in our alternate roles. One can move up if we're willing to do that. Therefore, we only have 1 alternate that we would need to place. Yes, sir.
Just, and I don't know who the right person answers this. So if we're going to promote, if that's the right term, an alternate to a regular member, is that follow the appointment process that we use? Excuse me.
I think, I mean, you would, as council would be able to decide how they want to, if they want to.
My question
Change
is,
the
would the
place.
alternate need to submit an application to become a regular member, or do we just move them into the role?
Historically, we moved them up. We had to do that as, when they fill it just now, but we could permanently make them a move. Typically, we do that with all the other changes, but we don't, there's no new application
Yeah.
or anything
We've done
like
that before. We've had an alternate move into a regular position, and they did not require an application. So basically, if you are willing, we could keep all of our incumbents in place, but we still do need 2 more applicants. Yes, ma'am.
I think out of this entire presentation, the thing that caught my attention was there's 0 applicants.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
There's 0
That's the
applicants
keyest-
and 2 places that need to get filled.
So no, we've received no new applications for
Yes, ma'am.
any open positions.
Yes,
Only
ma'am.
the incumbents have reapplied.
Yes, ma'am. I did get a call from an interested party, but alas, no application has followed. So, but this is the reason I wanted to come to you today, because August 10th is the last day to submit, and in the past, council has gone and tried to solicit positions to be filled. So right now, if we only wanted to concentrate on the ones that were open, it would be the Building Code Board of Appeals and the Zoning Board of Adjustments. But we do like to have additional applicants, that way we can have them in the, available in case there's another position that opens up. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any standing applications from previous cycles of
No.
people who didn't get in that we can?
No, ma'am.
Because they're, okay.
Last year
I'm trying to come up with ideas here.
Yeah, last
Okay.
year we were shy of the numbers that we
Yes.
needed, and we actually didn't fill one of the alternate roles.
So the key
But
message.
actually, I'm sorry, if we are able to move that one zoning board alternate role into a formal position, then ultimately we would have still 2 alternates that are unfilled. And just for clarity, the Building Code Board of Appeals, I don't believe they have ever met, so the concern of, filling that position isn't as tenuous as is the Zoning Board of Adjustment. That one we would need to fill. And I do believe that the person who called was interested in that role. But again,
So
alas.
Go ahead, Roy.
if I could ask a question to make sure I understand the situation we're in on the Zoning Board of Adjustments. That group is supposed to have 7 regular members and 3 alternates? Or
No,
just
5 and 2. 5 regular
Okay.
members and 2 alternates.
So if we build it up, because you say we have 4 open positions, does that mean we had 4 of the 5 regular positions came open this year? Because I thought we were trying
Yes, and
to
that is the board
avoid.
that we are going to make staggered. Because since it was
Okay.
created, they were created prior to when we started this process.
Okay, so we're working towards that. That
Yes.
helps me understand, because it just seems like we're burning through our alternates and not kind of keeping that pool maintained, which puts us at risk of not being able to put together a quorum on a time-sensitive role. So I think that's the one, probably, if council is going to really focus on seeing if we can find some willing citizens to do, that's probably should be our primary focus.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Well, as of right now, we have 5 members on the Zoning Board of Adjustment. 1 has resigned, and we have 2 alternates.
Yes.
And when they have meetings, 2 alternates are available to fill in for the 5 that are needed.
Correct. They are encouraged to always attend the meetings.
Yes.
And that when and if someone doesn't show up on time, one of them will fill in.
Both alternates have done a wonderful job of showing up. But that board is important, as Councilman Elizondo described, because they are quasi-judicial, and it takes 4 or 5 for them to affirm, any decision. So it's important they always have no less than 4 sitting.
Christina, what I took from this, one of the key messages is to fill up our boards and commissions, we really need several applicants that have not currently served. And so really you're giving a message to us that, one, we're putting it out over live stream tonight. We have several residents here that could help us with getting the information out. And
We have also, we have also pushed out notices via Facebook and on our network several times already. And I believe we still have 2 or 3 more pending.
Sure.
But we do have until August 10th, so I wanted to make sure you had plenty of time to hit the streets.
And as council members, we now have the information so that we
Yes,
can
sir.
go forward and put this out to see if we can get some applicants.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is just a joke. If we put a 4-way stop, we can stop people there and then ask them if they'll serve. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. The next report that we have tonight is our FY fiscal year 2022 23 utility fund budget overview. Turn this over to Scott.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Scott Hughesengay, Assistant City Manager. Tonight, I'd like to give an overview on where we are right now for the FY 22-23 Utility Fund. Presentation similar to the general fund overview we talked about at our last meeting. Again, it is still a draft budget. There are a few small changes from what was distributed in your packet previously, so we provide updated attachments to you here tonight. The changes involve small updates to our GBRA water agreement and our sludge handling anticipated expenditures next year based on the new project. So those are the changes, just so you're aware. And one IT item that was implemented this year that will have recurring costs next year. So those are the primary changes. Small in number, but this is the most updated version you have before you now. So going into this draft, as drafted right now, it's about a 6.7% increase in the utility fund total on the expenditure side. That is driven primarily by water reservation fees with GBRA and personnel to a lesser extent, and we'll drill down a little into those. The draft budget does include COLA updates as approved previously at the last meeting. It does not include any proposed utility increases that we have discussed in the with respect to wastewater. So this is an as-is budget, which, as discussed, we would revamp the wastewater as directed by council, probably potentially with the new calendar year, but after this draft has been updated. And finally, it does adjust for inflation and fuel prices, and again, as well as the planned dewatering press project going online mid-year. In the current draft, most of the utility rates are, as I mentioned, unchanged. All of the rate tiers remain the same, along with all the base meter rates For water, the water service fees total $28.60 currently. About half of that is surface water fees or pass-throughs from our agreement with GBRA. We're still determining what the final charges for that amount will be, but based on the new agreement rates that we talked about, we expect that could go up by about 75 cents per user per month in the next fiscal year. Everything else, the TCEQ fee will remain at 20 cents. Debt service will be about the same, $7.43 per month. And the capital reserve fee for water is currently at $6.72. That number can change based on the projects that are included in the budget and the funding mechanism as ultimately determined by council through the budget. That $6.72 per month per account currently generates about $257,000 for potential capital projects on the water side. For wastewater, again, all those rates are unchanged in the draft. The base wastewater charge is $40.86. Again, TCEQ is very small, 5 cents a month. The debt service is $2.30, and the capital reserve fee for wastewater is $4.12, which generates about $98,000 per year for capital projects at its current rate. So that's what composes the $6.47 in wastewater fees, service fees. As a whole, the utility budget is expected to be about $663,000 in surplus on an operating basis. So this is just revenues minus expenditures. This is before we account for any transfers for equipment, for capital, or depreciation expenditures. And that's how we get to net income, which we'll talk about later. But on an operating basis, this is where we are right now. When we break it down a little more, we can see that the water fund has a surplus, as we've discussed previously. The wastewater fund doesn't have an ongoing structural imbalance issue. This hasn't been necessarily the case every year, but we are losing ground in the wastewater fund generally, not just on the operation side, but especially with respect to, again, depreciation and capital improvements and replacements. On the revenue side, again, this draft budget estimates that water revenue will be slightly lower in the next budget year. And that's partially driven by expected lower impact fees from less development, as well as a function of consumption, which I'll talk about on the next slide. Of course, most of our water is based directly on the consumption as billed to accounts, and that consumption is notoriously hard to project. The department, when it creates its assumptions for us to include in the budget, uses a 5-year account average to project consumption for the upcoming year. Until recently, of course, with the conditions we're in now, the consumption trend was decreasing somewhat. That could be for a variety of factors, weather, of course, average per account may be used depending on conservation measures that each account holder is using on average. So even if overall consumption has gone up, we've seen, again, at least until recently, the average account, the per account basis has gone down. Obviously, it's hard to predict the weather a week in advance, much less 12 to 18 months in advance. So that's why we use that 5-year leveling to try and project these averages. Obviously, if the current weather trends continue, this could change significantly. But that's the basis for the current budget and the slight decrease if you look at that residential water use line. Within the last 5 years, we've seen about 20% variance from high to low. So that could go either way, I suppose.
I'm really struggling with this because I guess I'd like to understand the corresponding number of connections, over that time period to try to understand why our projected consumption would, go down below any historical level presented on this chart and I understand the idea that development may slow going forward, but we still have more connections in 2021 and 21-22 than we had back in 15, 16, 17, and 18.
And like I said, this can change frequently, but just to give you a flavor of where we were, the department will look at the total number of connections as of, I believe it's May of each year. And from 2021 to 2022, the number of residential connections increased by 50. I think it was 3075 and 3125, if I remember correctly. Under that same, in that same analysis, it also showed that average use at the different tiers, so from 0 to 6,000, that base water charge, 6,000 to 12,500, et cetera, et cetera. In that first year, that first tier, the percentage of users that did not exceed the first tier increased from 35% to 43%. So at least on average, in the aggregate, in the last period of time, the users had decreased this consumption on a proportional basis considerably. Now, we all know what's happened in the last 3 months with drought conditions and continued hot weather. So when we do this analysis sometime, whether it's in the next few months or next year, that proportion likely will change quite a bit again.
And I get that. It's just that when you tell me like the total gallons, billed through the system are dropping while we're increasing connections, it's just hard to get my head around. So I think you've answered my question though for now. But
and keep in mind too that when you look at those tiers, the first 6,000 has that base rate at, I'm blanking on the number off the top of my head, with the 6 gallons, but then the next tier is based at $3.81 per thousand, from 6,000 to 12,000 gallons. So it's
but we're just talking about
consumption as well.
Yeah, we're just talking about the metered commodity here, the volumes, and that's what I've just forget dollars, but the volumes are going down while we're growing, and that's what's not counterintuitive to me. And unless it's something, because I don't think we've done anything to drive that much conservation, unless our citizens are just, driving that on their own accord. It's just unusual.
22 is obviously still in progress, but I defer to the utility gang to elaborate on the drivers, but we did see a decrease from FY20 to FY21.
What was the spike in 1920 out of curiosity?
Good point.
I don't know off the cuff. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
We do have a breakdown by month as well, going back at least.
No, I just was wondering more than.
I'm trying to remember, but if I had to guess, I'd guess probably 19 was a relatively wet year and 20 was not.
I think
there's a lot of people that were staying home during COVID.
There is
and
that.
then people returned to work.
I think as part of this, Scott, as part of this presentation, you're really showing us a graph of where the water consumption has been as it relates to revenues that are taken in. And if we have other considerations as part of this on where the water is being utilized, maybe it's something we should address at a future time.
Sure.
I'm not sure that you have the information or the answers related to it at this time. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I guess the bottom line is the message was that to the questions, it seemed counterintuitive that why would the projection decrease when we're all experiencing the conditions we're in right now.
It was counterintuitive to a retired person that's always at home versus a person that works and realizes that change.
But we use that average leveling effect, and that's the reason why. That's the moral of the story.
It's still lower than before COVID, so it's just an interesting chart.
On the expenditure side, for the water utility specifically, over 40% of the expenditures are related to the direct contractual agreement we do have with the GBRA. Personnel is a little under a third, and the remainder goes to supplies and equipment. For wastewater, well, most of the supply is free, so to speak. So nearly 60% of the expenditures there are for personnel, and supplies and maintenance is, of course, as you can see, about close to 40%, and just a small amount for services. So changes from adopted 22, the current year, to the draft. Again, as mentioned, GBRA fees is the largest expenditure by the utility, so that's driving most of the increase. Due to the drought conditions in the current year, the city increased its commitment to GBRA from 840,000 gallons per month to per day rather, to 1.2 million gallons per day. That's an ongoing increase combined with a rate increase also coming from GBRA starting with the next fiscal year. So those factors combined contribute to a total increase of about $273,000 from FY22 to 23 as proposed. Again, we mentioned personnel includes not just compensation changes, but also projected changes to insurance and unemployment expenditures as well. So the biggest changes, we talked about GBRA, that's the biggest single change in the fund. Most of the other changes are incidental to maintenance and operations. There is savings from a contract with Siemens Corporation that the city has had for years that was intended to test, maintain, and replace automated readers on essentially a sampled basis. As I understand it, the city has continued to replace its own meters. We have the capability to monitor and replace faulty meters and stay up to date with them on their own, so we weren't getting a lot of value out of that I guess they call it the warranty contract. So the city canceled that contract this year, so that contributes to the largest savings. On the wastewater side as well, there is the largest changes in sludge hauling, which we have budgeted as a total conservatively high, I think, at $225,000. So that effectively, the $75,000 savings would represent just 3 months of saving. If the project stays on time, on budget, we could see as much as 6 months of savings, ultimately, depending on when the dewatering press goes online. So this budget is currently conservative, assuming that we only get about 3 months of savings in the next fiscal year. There are some scheduled capital items that are already included in the budget, a couple of vehicles and a mower. You can see the list on the screen. There are several CIP items that are still under review at this point in time. These project items, these projects particularly would affect either the capital reserve fee or the debt service fee, depending on the projects that the council ultimately approves and the financing mechanism by which it's approved. So these are items in particular that as we go through the process, we could especially use council guidance on determining, prioritizing capital projects and where we want those fees to be for the upcoming year, and again, how to finance it, whether it's on a cash basis or through a debt issue of some kind. So looking at net position as a full, in an enterprise fund, when we talk about net position, it's essentially how much is a utility worth, again, inclusive of assets and depreciation. In total, the utility is worth over $16 million. Of that fund, we will have at the end of the next fiscal year, based on this draft budget, an estimated $6.7 million in what we can basically call cash. Per adopted policy, we have targeted reserves for equipment as well as a debt service reserve. The capital funds are dedicated mostly to previously authorized projects and that are either in progress or to impact fee eligible projects only. So what's remaining out of that $6.8 million unrestricted net position is $2.6 million in operating reserves. This is roughly 6 months of operating reserves. The council goal in the utility fund is 9 to 12 months. So we're not yet, the 2.6 represents about 6 months in operating reserve as projected. So on the capital side, I want to drill in just a little more. Again, this is part of that $6.7 million. We have capital reserves as shown in the previous slide. Like I mentioned, most of those capital reserves are either dedicated for current projects as shown on the screen or for impact fee eligible projects only. The remainder, which is you have is highlighted there with the brackets, is what's available for other capital projects right now. That'd be about $460,000 combined in the water fund and $415,000 in the wastewater fund. Now, this is inclusive of the projected fees for next year. So it's the carryover from the current year plus the revenues we anticipate from the capital reserve fees in each of those funds. So, and combined, like in absence some other type of financing, again, we'd have roughly $460,000 in the water fund, $415,000 in the wastewater fund. With that, I'll talk about where we're going forward with the budget calendar for the rest of this process. We'll get into, after tonight, the department presentations and the overall formal budget approval process starting in August. So at the next meeting on the 4th of August, we'll present the no new revenue rates and the voter approval rates for property tax as submitted by Bexar County. We typically don't get those to just a couple days before, so I expect that will come after the packets come out, but that will be an informational item for the council on August 4th. At that meeting, it'll also be the first opportunity to hear directly from the departments and their presentations, and we'll start with the administrative departments. We'll have about 4 or 5 of those presentations for you at that time to drill down a bit on their operations and what's in those budgets. On the 18th of August, the council will set the public hearings for the proposed budget as well as the proposed tax rate if necessary. And we also plan to present the Public Safety and the Public Works Department budgets on the 18th as well. September 1st is an open date statutorily, so that's where we can have follow-up discussions and recap on the proposed budget, as well as discuss any potential amendments that the council might consider at that time after we've set the hearings. And at that time permitting, on the September 1st, we'll present the third quarter analysis for the current year as well to give you the final projections of where we think we will end up for fiscal year 22, which obviously influences the FY23 budget as well. And then, of course, September 15th is the big day in which City Council will consider the first reading of the property tax ordinances and the budget ordinance. And our ordinances require 2 meetings, so we have one scheduled special meeting on September 22nd for the second reading of the budget ordinance. I mentioned the department budget hearings, and I'm straying from the utility fund now, but I wanted to give you a bit of a preview for a change we're going to make to reporting on our, particularly our administrative departments, or we propose to change going forward. So this doesn't come as a big surprise when you see it at the next meeting. None of the changes I'm going to talk about are going to affect anything as far as total expenditures, total balances, or any other allocation in the budget, but it will affect how we report departmental expenditures in the budget document and budget reports. So I want to throw up a couple examples just so you can get a visual of what we're talking about. In the past, you would see a departmental budget that looked something like this in the general fund. In this case, this is the draft HR and communications budget, and we would report in our documents, in our budget document, an amount of $236,000, consisting of 2/3 of personnel, or expenditures related to personnel. That only tells part of the picture. What you will see going forward is the entire departmental budget, inclusive of all funds. Most of you know we split many of our administrative costs between the general fund and the utility fund for various services. Most times we would only see the general fund portion. So now you'll see a total budget of $428,000 split between a couple funds, which you see the proportions on the right. And as you can see, again, about 55% of the expenditures of the general fund, 45% in the utility fund. So it's no operational change to the department. I'll give you a heads up, so when you see this, it doesn't look like we're increasing a budget 70 or 80%. We're just showing the total budget. So accounting-wise, you will see the full budget encapsulated in the general fund with an offsetting revenue from the utility fund. So if you compare 22 to 23, yeah, it will look like a huge increase for that 1 year while we catch up. But we're just capturing all the expenditures in one fund so we can see the totality of all of our departments and how we're operating, how we're allocating the funds citywide. So similarly, I think we did one more. The IT budget, again, about $376,000 in the draft budget that we presented a couple weeks ago. The total for all funds is about $637,000. So similarly, the amount overall is, you'll see year to year significantly higher, but again, it's offset by utility revenue. The two budgets are identical, just a matter of how we're changing that. We think will ultimately make it more transparent for the council and the public going forward, reported in the document that way, so you will see the full departmental budgets going forward. But I wanted to give this information to you before the departments came and presented their case and you started grilling them on why their budgets were going up so much. So I wanted to let you know that in advance. So again, I guess that's it. So the draft budget, again, represents a slightly less than a 7% increase in the utility fund, of which over half is attributable to changes with respect to our GBRA agreement. We are still reviewing capital projects, which is, again, is an area where we could use council guidance as we go through the process. And we'll have, as we explained in the budget calendar, several more bites at this apple in the coming weeks, but as we head towards budget presentations and hearings next month, we'll, of course, take any and all input. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll try to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Pretty thorough. All right. Thanks,
Onward.
Scott.
Thank you.
That completes the reports we had from staff tonight. We'll move on to requests and announcements. Any council members have any announcements that they'd like to make tonight? Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody. So CLIA has an active shooter class at Apache this Saturday. That's fully subscribed. So, but we are still working on plans in conjunction with some other sponsors in the Bernie area to have a large venue active shooter class. The tentative date for that is August 27th. And then also for all the runners that might be in the room or listening, the Back to Badge 5K is going to happen, and that would be on September 10th. And there's currently availability to get on and sign up if you want to run. And I'll just mention that I'm hoping that, RPD has a team there so that they can bring back the trophy again this year. Thanks.
Thanks, Roy. Anybody else? A couple announcements that I had. One, continued plug about our water utility. We have seen a stabilization of the water in our water monitoring wells, which is good news. But we're still seeing an increase in consumption coming out of our water utility. And so I just urge all of our residents, especially those on our water utility, to conserve as much water as possible. Use your water wisely. We're at that time of year, end of July, August, and 1st September. It's normally the driest and the hottest time of our year. And with already high consumption, we don't want to go into this time period seeing even higher consumption. So just put it out. Please conserve what water we have. The second message that I had is related to a scheduled PEC, pernalis Electric Cooperative outage that's scheduled for next Wednesday, the 27th of July. First, this is a maintenance requirement with PEC. It's not a rolling blackout. So we've had a lot of questions about that. Are rolling blackouts starting? Well, no, this, whether they are or not, it's not related to what PEC is doing next Wednesday. It appears that the majority of the houses that are being impacted by this outage are Deer Meadow Estates, and only the homes in Deer Meadow Estates. This is a PEC issue. And they have done the notifications. They've notified by phone, by email, by mailer, to let all the customers that are going to be experienced in the power shutoff on Wednesday. But I'd like to highlight from our city staff, they've taken it on to ensure that we continue to provide the information to our residents. And I believe we'll start messaging tomorrow from the city. And in addition, have reached out and scheduled, I believe it's just one location, maybe two, for cooling areas for those that, without air conditioning, that may need an area to go to cool. And that will be included as part of the messaging that goes out from the city. So kudos to all the effort for taking this on. Tobin, anything else?
Yes, sir. A few quick announcements. Bulk brush pickup starts in August. There's plenty of information on our website. Flyers have gone out, but if you need additional information, that is on the city website. That'll run from August 1st to August 19th. There's been a lot of discussion about the TxDOT bridge. I know a lot of property owners have been noticed. If the council recalls, we had a committee a couple years ago that kind of went on hiatus when TxDOT defunded the project or they put it on hold. We're in the process of reestablishing organization with TxDOT. Grant and I will be having a meeting with their leadership next week, and we hope to bring back to council an opportunity to get that committee going and also coordinate with the other impacted entities in the city like Forha and the churches. But again, this is just for the bridge project that they're advancing right now and some of the right-of-way purchases that they're looking at. Tomorrow we will be hosting the TCMA, Texas City Managers Association Region 8 monthly luncheon. So we'll have 35 to 40 city managers here in town, as well as some of the rising stars of the next generation. The mayor has agreed to come to the luncheon and welcome them to Fair Oaks Ranch. So it's always nice to have those professional development opportunities in our community. The final announcement is we had an unfortunate situation here with one of our assistant city managers, and she will be out of pocket for at least 6 to 8 weeks. So I'm going to be assuming responsibilities for all of those direct reports, and we'll be making that transition here until she can safely return. And if you need some details, I'll let you know. But please keep Carol and her family in your prayers. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Tobin. Are there any council members that have any topics that they'd like to recommend or have addressed at a future agenda council meeting? Tobin, I'm not aware of any issues that we need to go into executive session for this evening.
That's correct.
Okay. And Christina, is there anything that we've missed tonight?
No, sir.
Tobin?
No, sir.
Then I have now, the time is 8:12, and we are adjourned.